Hey. Okay, hello everybody. My name is Kristin Fraser. I'm the founder of Inner Glow Getter, and I am so excited to bring on Michael Stone out of LA. He is a fellow engineer, which I think is awesome. His background in engineering has then led him to this amazing journey towards becoming a certified holotropic breathwork facilitator. And he's the founder of Breathwork Online. .com. So he sort of formulated his own version called neurodynamic breathwork, which I have been personally experiencing for the past, 5 or 6 months I've been a member. And for many of you, you've seen me post or talk about this, and I pretty much have every single client of mine do this. That's like almost like a required thing for me as I help people, I help people try to eat better. And a lot of times with our eating behaviors, there's a lot of emotional blocks that come up. So I've found that the breath work has been one of the best tools to help remove those emotional blocks that keep us from eating our best. Now, I've shared in a post about this whole about what breathwork is to me and some of the benefits I've experienced, what I've witnessed other people experience. I've sort of been around it for around 2 years. But I'm really starting to understand and experience for myself the benefits and the ongoing benefits of keeping it as a practice, as a regular practice, because I did do it for a period of time where I thought, okay, now I'm good to go. And I kept going on in life. And I realized this is something you keep integrating into your life. But some of the things that I have found of my own personal benefits and what I've seen in other people have been emotional healing, really energizing the body for people who struggle with fatigue. Also finding clarity or inspiration in your life's purpose, overcoming procrastination or stagnation in your life when you don't know what's next, stress and anxiety relief. I've seen people really benefit who have sort of addictive tendencies, overeating behaviors, things like that, weight loss. And the deeper parts of this, which I love, and this is going to be a great segue, is also financial manifestations and attracting or maintaining healthy relationships or love into your life. So welcome, Michael. This is actually an interview with you, as I'm I could spend the whole hour talking about how much I love breath work. But thank you so much for joining us. I'd love to hear, let's start with your journey and what got you into breath work, coming from an engineering background.
Yeah, well, basically for many years, I was originally a chemical engineer and started working for a very large company and was kind of on this pathway to moving ahead in the company, kind of like this normal pathway in life. And that was happening. I was moving ahead. I was doing well in business, but at the same time, I found that in other areas of my life, I was not doing well. Yeah. And for instance, in relationships, I kept having these explosively dramatic failed relationships. And I've got a very strong mind, and that's what brings me ahead in business. But no matter how much thinking I did and trying to figure it out, I could never figure out what was going on and why, since I was so successful in business, why couldn't I take that and bring it over to these other areas of my life? Mm-hmm. And so even though I was moving ahead in my company, I was frustrated personally because these other things that I want to work with in my life, which had to do with more things from the heart, like relationships, I was completely blocked and I could not figure out what the issue was. Mm-hmm. And so then at a certain point in my life, around 12 or 13 years ago, I came across breathwork and specifically holotropic breathwork, where the creator of that, who's a psychiatrist and a psychologist, Dr. Stan Grof, had developed breathwork based on his own history with working with these, what he called non-ordinary states of consciousness. He had originally worked with patients through LSD psychotherapy and gotten these amazing results when people's ego minds were kind of quieted and he could access more of this internal stuff and basically people had these amazing healing experiences and figuring out their purposes in life and just getting downloads. And so after that was outlawed at that, back in the 70s, he spent about a year working and doing research in modern consciousness theory and also what traditional tribal kind of structures had to use to access these same kind of states, and then developed this breath work out of that. And and that's what I trained in.
Mm-hmm.
I took a couple courses and had amazing results. And after doing a series of breath works, I actually got to the bottom of what was blocking me from having successful relationships.
And what was
If I
it?
hadn't done breath work, I would have never have gotten there.
Yeah.
And for me, it was basically that I grew up in this household. I had a very, in a sense, uneventful childhood. There was nothing horrible that happened. But both of my parents were originally German Jews who had gotten chased out of Germany before World War II. And their families had been in Germany for hundreds and hundreds of years. Like my grandfather got an Iron Cross for like he was a war hero, and then they had to run for their lives. So when I was young, I was getting this conditioning that the world is an unsafe place. You can't trust your country. You can't trust anybody. You've got to watch out for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was like, by the time I grew up, that was all kind of in my unconscious. And so obviously, if you're trying to have a successful relationship and coming into it from a space of you can't trust anybody, you're never going to be successful, because you can never really open up and take the risk of trusting other people, because it just was too unsafe. But I was not consciously aware of what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I kept kind of like holding back in my relationships, and then the person would leave and drama would be created. And I always thought it was the other person's fault. So finally in breathwork, I realized what the common denominator was in all these failed relationships, and that was me. So
yes, and we were just talking about that, and I love what you said about what was your analogy with the movie? It's like
yeah, it's kind of like it's very clear now from neuroscience that our outer world, our view of our outer world, is projected from our inner world.
Mm-hmm.
And we carry our inner world with us wherever we go. In my case, I was carrying this inner world of the world is an unsafe place. So that's the lens I saw everything through, but it was unconscious.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like when we try to fix things in our environment, it's like, in essence, it's like a film that's projecting onto a screen, and we're trying to fix something in the film by playing with what's happening on the screen.
Yeah, like how we want to fix our partner sometimes, or we want
exactly right. So,
like you said, you always want to you try to find a different partner because oh no, this partner isn't right for me, but really it's all inside.
And the reality is once you kind of do your inner work, your partner will shift, because you'll see them in a different way, and then you allow them to shift.
Yeah.
When you see the world through a certain way, you don't allow the world to change.
Yeah.
And when you're not aware of the lens you're seeing the world through, your outer world can never change, no matter how once you figure it out. So you have to do this inner work to see kind of what your unconscious conditioning is, to let it go, to be able to open up your view to see the outer world in a different way, and to shift your outer world.
So let's talk about this unconscious, or we talk about the conscious mind and the subconscious mind a lot. And for me, I always try to explain it like, your conscious mind is the person that's like, I want to have a good relationship. But the subconscious mind, which actually dictates our behaviors, is the one that's the underlying, and we don't really have direct access to that except for things like breath work. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. It's like when we perceive the world, we perceive it through our five senses. And it's, through science and neuroscience, it's very clear now that we only actually take into our conscious mind a few % of all the data that's coming in. The rest of it goes straight to our unconscious, and we're completely unaware of it unless we do some work to actually kind of drop this ego mind and be able to actually work with and access this information that's in our subconscious or unconscious.
Yeah.
And one of the pathways is breath work. I mean, it's not the only pathway, but to me, it's the most efficient, effective, and quick pathway to actually get that connection that's available to people.
So this is interesting because everybody seems to have what we call a story, in a sense, and I always find it funny when people think that it's like, this is what they believe to be true, whether it be even physical ailments, like relationship stories. Oh, I always am with this person, the patterns that we have. And everybody has what I call their story, even financial stories. I'm so fascinated by this because it's shifted so much in my life, changing my own stories ongoingly. Your financial story, like, oh, I just can't get ahead, or all of those things.
Well, I mean, finance is a perfect example. You know, you can
Yeah.
consciously want to make more money and want to attract abundance and finances into your life.
Hmm.
But for many people, especially when they do like work that's more in the kind of what you would call spiritual realm or whatever of helping people, some people have this unconscious story of that, okay, people had to cheat to get ahead, or that money's somehow bad in some way. It's like, and when that's there, it's kind of like their conscious mind is pushing on the gas, but their unconscious mind is pushing on the brake, and you're never going to get anywhere until you can get this kind of unconscious and conscious working together to move you forward in the same direction.
Yeah, like you were saying about that alignment between with the two, and
Exactly.
that's breath work facilitates that alignment essentially. And I like what you said too about how, we're always maybe even trying to fix parts of us. We try to fix things or figure out things. I find that too with the kind of left brain mind. It's funny, my story has really around finances for a long time was money equaled depression to me, because when I
Mhm.
worked so hard as an engineer, I actually struggled a lot with depression. And so I always found like if I work hard, I'm going to get depressed.
Mhm.
Or if I make money, that's like equivalent to depression. So that was an interesting one that I think breath work really helped me break through that. Um, but yeah, this whole idea of like figuring it out versus letting go and allowing. Can you go into detail around that?
Yeah, it's really sometimes it's very difficult for people just to in their regular life go into a place of just allowing, surrendering, and just allowing life to flow and come in, and
Mm-hmm.
to move forward within the flow of life. And if you can just open, because the ego mind is constantly chit-chatting in your head, and the ego mind is never in the moment. It's either in the past or the future.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very difficult just to be in this moment and to act, clearly access what's going on in your body, what's happening. And breath work is a really, really good way through breath and music to actually quiet that ego mind that's constantly chattering in your head and trying to figure stuff out, and not letting you be in the moment and present, and being able to access this really inner intelligence that everybody has, and which normally we're just not very connected to.
Mm-hmm. It
And
is
so
that.
it's a way to actually access this amazing internal intelligence or guidance, or people look at it a different way. It can be inner guide, inner intelligence, inner creativity,
Mhm.
intuition that we normally just have very little access to.
Yeah, and I find that interesting too when we talk about creativity or inspiration, right? I
Yeah.
feel like for me too, when I felt blocked or I don't know what's next, it's can be like that's. I think depression is actually a suppression of your creativity. It's a suppression um, of your potentiality essentially. And but a lot of times it can feel really you can feel really stuck in that
Hmm.
place and not knowing how, like I always feel for people who have especially because of my own experience when I've gone through really financial difficulties, it's a really scary space when you don't know how to even make the next dollar kind of thing. And when you let go, and that's what breathwork to me was just like mind blowing to me. When I let go, like days later I had opportunities can't come to me that were of huge financial abundance. I thought, oh my gosh, like what was I ever worried about? But it took that breath work, I think, to release that. And a lot of people don't realize that really your inner does really create your outer. And when you're open to surrender, that's really when a lot of things can come in.
Yeah, and there's like this old spiritual story of this um, like wise man who's at the entrance to a village, and this one guy comes and he asks, well, "What are the people like in this village?" And he says, "Well, what were the people like where you came from?" And he goes, "Oh, they were backstabbing. They were horrible. That's why I left." And he says,
Uh-huh.
"Well, tough luck. The people are the same here." He says, "Oh man, I came all this way." Then another guy comes and he asks him the same question. He said, "Oh, people where I came from, they were loving, they were open-hearted. I'm just on a vacation. What are the people like here?" And he said, "Oh, you're in luck. They're exactly the same way." And the
Yeah.
reality is when you have this view of people being a certain way, you will create them that way, no matter how they are, because all the information that comes into your brain that contradicts that won't
Mhm.
register. It'll go straight to your unconscious. And the stuff that comes to your consciousness will only be what agrees with your current worldview. And
Mhm.
when you start to dive into that in breath work and start to open up other possibilities for yourself in this worldview and seeing things in a different way. It just opens up this whole new way to perceive life and see the world, and just opens up possibilities that were not available to you before. It's just so beautiful that, like, the circle that you were in is just like, oh, I don't need to be in that circle anymore. I don't need to be on this kind of treadmill anymore. There are other possibilities that I just were not available to me before.
It is. It's sort of that wherever you go, there you are, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, and I love this too, because I say same thing that happened to me. I mean, I remember even when I lived in here, I wanted to run away to Dubai. When I lived in Dubai, I wanted to run away to Bali. When I got to Bali, I had a yoga teacher say to me, he just looked at me and he's like, "Honey, the only way out is in." And I was like, oh, I know that. Like, and I realized, like, all these things that I was all these experiences that felt like real downfalls in my life were my own magnetism to that. And that was when I really was like, oh man, you always want to play that victim mentality of like, that poor me, this happened to me, or what's wrong with me. And it takes some like shedding of that away, and a lot of self-acceptance. I think a lot of people are hard on themselves for not having a certain life that they maybe want, or feeling like a failure or not enough is a big one that comes up, I think, a lot. So, like, explain some of the things you were saying earlier too about some of the more profound, I guess, outcomes for a lot of people who have been practicing breath work for some time.
Well, one of the major things is that people get more connected to their creativity. That's a huge deal, and especially for people in the creative fields like writers or actors. I mean, they just report that afterwards their acting is just better because they just have more access to this kind of, everybody has this capability of being incredibly creative. Like being a human being is like being a creative act almost, if you're not blocked from that. And we are meant to be these creative machines, in essence, or whatever you want to call it, that are constantly creating. That's how we're supposed to be. But unfortunately, it's like this, we're constantly having this ego mind, which was really built for survival. I mean, that's normal, right? It's like, as historically, as the human race developed, what was important was to survive so the next generation could be born. And so the ego mind loves when things never change. Because when things are staying the same, there's no risk. But on the other hand, you can't thrive like that. And so, if for people that are happy with just doing the same thing every day and just going to their little job and watching TV at night and drinking a beer and, staying with their ego mind totally works, and they feel safe, even though underneath it, what the beauty of life is that life is insecure. If it was secure, it wouldn't be interesting, because then life would be boring. So they never get to the place where they just like really welcome and enjoy this insecurity of life and all these possibilities of life that are coming. So
do you feel like that lifestyle, because I've kind of lived both and I've jumped into the unknown a lot more, and I feel like it became quite a bit more of a roller coaster, but in both ways, I feel like it actually, like, I have had so many more incredible experiences in my life, and opened up to a lot of magic, but I've also had a little bit more of that, like, real humbling. I call it universal smackdown sometimes. And do you feel like that's part of it too? If when you jump into the uncertainty that you're kind of going to ride some waves a bit more?
Oh, 100%. It's like what people want is to have only what their meaning creating mind has defined as a positive experience, and not to have the other side. It can't work like that.
It can't work.
Either you stay in the middle and don't get anything, or if you want to have the highs, there's also the lows. And the lows are really just all learning experiences. It's really about shifting your perception of what life has to offer.
Yeah, I think that's a big part.
Anytime an emotion comes up, it's a chance to learn about yourself.
Yeah.
It's never a bad thing, no matter, it's in the same sense that if you're riding a roller coaster, one person will feel fear and the next person will feel excitement. And exactly the same thing's happening inside their body. They're just like basically from their past creating a different story around it.
I love
There's
that
really
analogy.
nothing that is a quote unquote negative experience. Every experience in life has the opportunity to learn more about yourself and to move you forward, getting through your blocks and creating really the reality that you want.
I really love that. That's such a great analogy. I love the roller coaster, and somebody's scared and someone's excited, and it is the same experience. So it comes back to your accountability to your perception.
Right.
And so for somebody who may be feeling more on a negative trajectory, what would you say to them as a practice, including breath work, to get on a more positive trajectory in life?
Well, I think, Christine, like the first thing is that through breath work, when you start to see that you can shift your perception and kind of change your reality, you start to feel more self-empowered. I mean, people who are on this quote unquote negative ride, they feel like they have no control.
Yeah.
And they feel like no matter what they do, like they can't influence it. That's why they feel sad or depressed or whatever, because they feel like there's nothing they can do. When you start to do breath work and start to connect to this inner guidance, you'll see that you create your own reality, you create your own perception, you create your own story, and you can shift anything in your life anytime you want to. It's really completely in your control. And once you start to feel like, I call this type of breath work a modality of radical self-empowerment, because as you connect to this inner guidance, this inner wisdom, you'll see that anything you want to shift in your life, you can, because it's all, you created it in the first place. You created the story that created your reality of feeling depressed or excited or whatever it is. If you can create it one way, you can shift it and create it any way you want.
Yeah.
So,
And I love that.
and once you start to see that and embody that, because it's not a thinking thing, you have to really embody it. Your life just changes. It's like hard to describe even.
I know, and I believe that from like intellectual standpoint too. When I really started to understand I could create my reality, and so I would really into affirmations and things where I was like, okay, I am this, and I would attract a lot of incredible things into my life, and it kind of comes into this whole manifestation where you realize like, okay, if I can be something different, I just need to become the vibrational match, so to speak, to that experience. So I would do a lot of meditation and I am statements, but I realized too in that there was a lot of subconscious beliefs and blocks that I didn't understand because I didn't know how to access that until I found breath work. I realized like once I experienced breath work, that's where you get to really drop the story in behind the scenes.
Right.
That's where you can't access it otherwise. So I don't know how people really can reach that potentiality without breath work in a way.
Well, I mean, there are other pathways, but most of them are like, for instance, Buddhist meditation, like expert meditators who have done it for 10 years, it can really focus their mind, can drop the ego mind, but it takes a long time and a lot of practice.
Yeah.
And in breath work, you can have like first time out of the box, you can have this kind of expanded state of awareness experience.
Yeah, it's somewhat euphoric. So speaking of that, we should explain what is breath work, because I know a lot of people on the call haven't, how is it different from something like meditation? A lot of people think, oh, breath work, I'm just going to do some breathing exercises in lotus position or something. So can you explain, or just a little bit of the process of what it is?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So there's all kinds of different things that people call breath work, and they all have different purposes. Like, for instance, some breath work, its purpose is to relax and calm, be calm. This is very different. This is a faster, deeper breathing. So you're moving more oxygen through your system, and you're creating certain physiological changes in your body that allow your ego mind to quiet down. It's a part of your brain that's called the default mode network. That is, so basically it creates these physiological changes to allow that network to kind of deactivate, where you don't get these little chit-chat thoughts constantly you're just kind of on this journey and having this experience, and it opens up the stuff in your unconscious to come up and be recognized, and to come out and to be recognized and released. And there's the different types of experiences. And for instance, this is one thing that's very different about other kinds of breath work. You can have pretty intense physical experiences, because as we go through life and when we suppress emotions into our body, there is always this kind of physical blockage that's in there too, that's connected to it. And when you're a kid, when you're 20 years old, you can do pretty much anything you want to your body, and it'll be fine. You can pull all-nighters, you can do this, you can do that. But as you get older, if you don't have a practice to take these kind of energetic blocks and tensions in your body and release them, it's like the symptoms of that are you wake up in the morning and you're tired when you first wake up. It's like, oh, I got to get out of bed kind of thing. Oh, where's my cup of coffee? I can't survive without my cup of coffee. People have this amazing natural energy, But if you put too much blockages in your body, you just don't have good access to it. And as you start to do breath work and start to get these releases of these like physical blocks in your body, like you start to feel more energized when you get up in the morning. You're like, we just can't wait to get up out of bed.
Yeah.
And if you don't have good energy, you will never get to where you want to get in life. It's just not possible where 3 hours later, oh, I'm tired, I need another cup of coffee, or whatever it is. It's just, there's no way you're going to get to where you want. So that's one of the types of experiences you can have that's really, really powerful.
Yeah.
And people are surprised by how intense this physiological release can be. It's really quite amazing.
And I've had I would say most of my clients that have come through the breathwork experience have had really profound, and a lot of people just like, wow, like just wrote me back, wow. And I'm like, I know it's a really profound kind of euphoric sense of love too. There's this energetic energy of like a real feeling of like, not just a feeling of love, but a real knowing of,
right.
But then there's some people that can go through maybe a bit more challenging experiences. And I love that you say that there's no bad experiences, because I really agree with that. And I like that you say too, it won't take you deeper than what you are ready to release. Is that something around that kind of lens? Can you speak to that too, for people that may be afraid of like, what's going to come up for me,
Right. It's really about, and this is not just like a theory, like for instance, in holotropic breathwork, there's been several million experiences already in people around the world, in the last 40 years. And it's always the case that nothing will come up unless it's ready to be processed. Like this inner guidance won't send it up to be processed. So sometimes people will come in and say, oh, I want to deal with this thing that happened to me when I'm 5 years old. If it's not ready to be processed, it's not going to come up. Something else will come up. And that's why it's really important not to go in with trying to guide the experience or set an intention, get the ego mind, I want to deal with this. It's more of what I would call a feminine modality. It's not a modality of I'm going to push through this and make this happen. It's a modality of let go, of surrendering, and allowing whatever wants to process to come up and be processed, and just let it come, just being like a vessel for it to come up and be released.
Yeah.
And
I like that.
And so you can get these physiological things. And when you talk about a negative experience, I mean, as an example, sometimes people will get like pains that come in various parts of their body, and what's happening is the body just knows intuitively that the best way to get a release of tension in your body is first to maximize the tension. So what it's trying to do is get the most effective release. So you might get like a pain in your shoulder, and then it releases, and it might move around the different places. And people at first might go, oh, I'm getting a pain in my body. This is horrible. This is a negative experience. It's not a negative experience. It's just like the way your body needs to do to release this tension that's inside of you. Anything that happens, it's not something new that's coming into you. It's something that's in your body that wants to come out. And you can do it two ways. You can kind of just hold it in for the rest of your life and have it kind of run your life and feel tired in the morning, or you can spend an hour in a breath work and go through a little like gets painful, then it releases, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
And so that's the physiological type of experience. And you can also have what you might call a difficult emotional experience, where you're re-experiencing something, let's say from your past, that was a difficult experience. Like when you're a child, you don't have a very good way of dealing with very emotional experiences, so you suppress them into your system. But they still run your life. It's just like for me, when I had this kind of cultural conditioning when I was a kid, there was stuff that happened to me when I went to school, where I was and it stays with you and it runs your life unless you can really access it, re-experience it from an adult perspective. This time really allow it to be fully felt and released, and then it doesn't run your life anymore. So you can define it as a negative experience in the sense that, well, it's emotionally difficult, but then it's gone.
Yeah.
And it's better to maybe go through an emotionally difficult experience, but then to have it out of your body for the rest of your life than to carry it around with you till you die, basically.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of people that like that carry around those resentments, I've seen from being away for 3 years, people who have like that issue with that family member that's from like when they were younger, that's still an issue. And they're just kind of hanging on to this story of like, they hurt me when, and it's like, wow, we really need to let that stuff go, but I don't think they have the tools. And I feel like breathwork is also one of those tools that can really help let go of like resentments and changing the story and like you say, cultivating healthier relationships with people too.
Well, it allows you to see, for especially things that happened to you when you were a child, you had a very, very limited perspective to interpret them through.
Yeah.
And you really couldn't take the big picture. And this allows you to have some experiences of going back and seeing what really happened from a broader perspective.
Yeah.
And sometimes that completely shifts your story around what it meant, because you create meanings. Your brain always is creating meanings, and when you're a child you create these meanings that are not necessarily accurate because you don't have a very good perspective to see what happens to you from.
Yeah.
Like let's say you have brothers and sisters and your mom spends time with you and then she goes off and spends time with your sister. Your child mind, oh, my mom's abandoning me, she doesn't like me.
Yeah.
It can't take the
This is her
perspective, hey, you
favorite,
got,
yeah, or something. Yeah.
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 So you start to see things from a broader perspective and start to look at things from a very, very different way that supports you in moving through your life instead of holds you back.
Yeah, I feel like you become a lot more of the observer of your life rather than so attached, and which is to me sometimes a little bit annoying because I'll like feel something come up. I'm like, am I really feeling this, or what should I think I'm feeling?
Right.
I'm so much more objective of my emotions from doing breath work now. Like even when I'm like, oh, I feel jealous. Do I feel jealous, or was that emotion just, what, can I breathe through that? Like, it's interesting. So coming back to even when it comes to like healing physical ailments, I look at people like Dr. Andrew Weil, who recommends breath work to his patients. And of course, Wim Hof, he talks about like overcoming any kind of challenges and physical ailments through the breath. What have you seen in your experience from people with more physical or like things that need to be healed, and how breathwork has helped with that?
Well, I've just found that many times, many physical ailments are psychosomatic, and that there's a physical component and an emotional component attached to it. Like one example, there was this man who came I did a few breathwork sessions, who had been in a very bad car accident. And as a result of that, he couldn't move his arm above like his shoulder level. That was it. That was as far as he could move it. And he'd been to chiropractors. He'd been to, all kinds of therapies. And, just for 2 years, he tried to work on this and wasn't getting anywhere. And then in his, I think, second or third breathwork session, he actually went back to the accident, re-experienced the accident, but this time instead of dissociating, like where your consciousness dissociates. I don't even remember what happened at the time of that. And, he kind of really went through it, experienced it, let himself fully feel what happened and let it go. And after the breathwork session, he could move his arm normally again. And this is something he'd been working on for 2 years with all kinds of other modalities that were just trying to work on the physical component of it.
Yeah.
So, that's not true of every single situation. Like you can't say, oh, I'll do breath work and I'll.
Yeah, no, of course not. Yeah. Yeah.
But there are many, many situations where there is an emotional component where the physical component will either completely get resolved or at least get much, much better. And it's just amazing when, just all this emotional stuff that's suppressed into your system that you're just not conscious of.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people say, well, how do I know what's in my unconscious? And you can see by what are you creating in your outside world. If you're creating a world that's not exactly the world you want, there's something in your unconscious that's keeping that from happening.
Absolutely.
And especially if you consciously really want something and it's not happening, then the only way to get beyond it is to do some inner work and see what's going on inside, because that's where the creation machine is happening.
Yeah. And I love when I just want to repeat this again, because I still love what you said about that it's not about even trying to figure it out as much as it is just letting go and just opening. That's what I found with breathwork. It's kind of that I'm seeing that this isn't what I want in my life. So what do I need to do? Well, in the breathing, you kind of just let go and it's sort of gone. And I think that's what's really powerful about it.
I've seen so many people who have afterwards shared, or in the sharing afterwards, either written me emails.
Yeah.
Where they're just saying, oh my God, I've been looking for 5 years for what my purpose in life is. I got 2 breathwork sessions and I got it. I know what I need to do now.
Yes. And I feel the same way. I've had that personally too for me. I mean, I've told you in the last few sessions, I pretty much get up. I can't even finish it. I have to get up and write so many ideas. And I've stayed up after a session until 7 o'clock in the morning, talk about energy, because I couldn't sleep. I was so wired and energized. And I just thought, wow. So maybe more morning sessions.
Right.
So now over towards the emotional side as well. I know you have people that you work with from a psychotherapy standpoint, we were talking about earlier as well. Or, people that see psychotherapists, psychologists. I've seen many in my life myself. And, for me, I have such a passion with people that struggle with depression, because that was a big turning point, a shifting point in my own life. And I found, with psychotherapy and psychology, it's great to kind of process and have a professional help you talk through a lot of things. But the breath work was the more, to me, I'm like, it's more of a get in there and get it out of you. And like, do you want to talk about your depression, or do you want to just be done with it? Because that was, to me, it was like, it was such a physical shift. And so how do you feel about the integration of breath work as a sort of supportive
Right.
method with therapy and stuff like that?
Well, I think breathwork and therapy go great together. And
Yeah.
breathwork is not like, some things people will come to you and say, oh, you do this, drop everything else in your life. This
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
it. Breathwork's not like that. Breathwork is really a tool for you to use and then to integrate into your life afterwards, to get insights, to resolve issues, to move forward, to see what's holding you back. And obviously, if you have a relationship with a therapist who's been helping you, and you can take these experiences and bring them back into therapy, it can catapult your therapy and really allow you to move forward much quickly, because in therapy, you're really limited to speaking. Like when your therapist speaks to you, it's always filtered through your conscious mind, through your ego mind. And there's still
Yes.
like defense
And it's filtered
systems and
through the
stuff like that.
struggle. It's like you're the struggler speaking,
Right.
in a
So,
way.
and in breath work, when you can access this inner stuff and then bring it to therapy, it can create these amazing breakthroughs that can allow your therapist to really move forward your therapy in a much more effective, quicker way.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great combination. It's not like you have to be in therapy to do breath work, but if you already are in therapy and you're getting benefit from it,
Yeah.
bringing the two together is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is great. We were talking about before, like, who is breath work for? And we kind of speak it like it's for everybody, except for who, like who is not a good candidate for breath work?
Um, well, there's a few like just physiological contraindications, like if you have high blood pressure and stuff like that. But other than that, it's really there's certain people, and I'm sure everybody has these people in their lives where they just like they go to work, they come home, they hang out with the kids, they watch TV, they drink their beer, they go to bed, and they come up and do it over and over again, and they're fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with that if that's what makes them happy, or if
Yeah.
that's what they want to do. And for that kind of person, breath work probably wouldn't be good, because they would start to see things that they, like avenues of change that could make them, uncomfortable. And am I really happy with this kind of life? It could stir them up. You know what I mean? If they don't want to be stirred up, if they don't want to see new possibilities, and they just kind of want to stay in their circle, then they probably shouldn't do breath work, because breath work is designed to allow you to see things from different perspectives and to open up possibilities in your life.
Mm-hmm.
So in a sense, you've got to really have this, at least a bit of this adventurous spirit of seeing, okay,
Got it.
it's like when you perceive something, as I was saying before, it's like you can only perceive 3 or 4% of what's coming in. The other 96% goes straight to your subconscious.
Yeah.
And it's even worse than that, because your like retina is two-dimensional. So your brain has to make it from two-dimensional into three-dimensional.
Mm-hmm.
And your brain puts colors in. Colors don't exist. Your brain makes them happen.
Mm-hmm.
So like, do you want to work with this 4%, or do you want to work with the other 96% and see what's really happening?
Absolutely.
When your brain is kind of taking this 4% and figuring out, like, from its past and from meanings, what the other 96% is,
Mm-hmm.
and creating this reality for you. Do you want to get behind that, really see what's happening in the projector instead of looking at the screen outside all the time?
Mm-hmm.
And it's
I love
just,
that.
I mean, it's just this beautiful, opening, amazing experience when you see what's available to you, like inside your brain, how your brain works, and what are the possibilities you can open for yourself when you start to explore your inner world. It's
I
just
love
amazing.
that. I
an
love
amazing
that. And
feeling.
speaking of that, one final thing about, your subconscious mind and how impacted that is. Like a lot of people, it's interesting for me. I'm such an observer of everybody and their language and how they perceive the world. And a lot of people who maybe have a negative outlook, especially with people that are into politics,
Hmm.
people that follow, the economy and some of the downturns, or like watch the news a lot, and they're kind of in this, and I kind of call them out. I try to call them out a little bit about it, like, maybe not watch some of that and focus on the good things in a day. And they're like, well, I'm just a realist, or it's like that. It's like I'm looking at things from the real world, and and I feel like that's not the real world. I think the real world is actually the bliss, the happiness, the joy, the connecting to love and
Right.
abundance
Exactly. Right.
and clarity.
Yeah.
And that's not the real world. So how do you feel like watching, the news, all these things, even horror movies and things like that, affect our subconscious and our outlook on life?
Yeah. You know what? It's kind of like people spend a tremendous amount of time, at least many people now do, more conscious people, about what they put in their bodies and
Yeah.
almost no time in what they put in their minds.
Yeah.
And you have to realize it's like when you constantly watching TV shows with people killing each other and this and that, like it affects you.
Yeah,
And
it does.
everything that comes in through your senses impacts you, and you start to create stories in your mind. And if you keep watching movies about people that are backstabbing each other, your brain will start to create a story. That's how people are.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not necessarily conscious of it, but it's really important to become more conscious of what data are you inputting into your mind that it's going to then work with to create your reality.
Yeah.
And being more aware of that. Once you're more aware of that, you're going to be more conscious about putting in data that supports where you want to go in your life and the reality that you really want to create.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of having it be this unconscious thing that's running your life
Yeah.
kind of underneath the surface.
Yeah, I feel like there's such this rational like, to me, I'm just so done with the word rational right now, because it's like this rational perspective, and I just don't see the world that way. I think there's such a beautiful energetic thing, that field that we can really tune into and have and create a
Mhm.
world of whatever we want. And I've lived that, and I've had my ups and downs through that, and I really want to share that message with people. So um
And
yeah, I think that it's
Christine, like in kind of just a little more about who is breathwork appropriate for.
yeah.
There's certain situations where I wouldn't advise people to do breathwork. I mean, as an example, if someone is in the middle of being actively addicted to a substance,
Mm-hmm.
breathwork wouldn't be very good for them, because it's like, why are they addicted to a substance? It's mostly they're trying to avoid facing their emotions.
Yeah.
And the substance takes them out of that, where they don't have to deal with it. If you do breath work, your emotions will come up. So
Mhm.
it'll push you back into the substance because you want to escape even more.
Yeah.
So it's really not for what I would call the people that are in this kind of walking wounded, kind of super damaged, can't deal with things, can't deal with their life, lay in bed all day,
Mhm.
don't want to face the world kind of thing.
Mhm.
I'd say that the people that get the best benefit out of breath work
Mhm.
are people who are in a pretty decent place in their life, but they're
Mhm.
just not manifesting everything that they really feel like they can do.
Yeah.
And but they're not really able to see where the blocks are. So it's like, okay, I'm doing well here, but my relationship is so. I want to break through. I want to have the most amazing relationship that's ever existed on the planet, but they
Yeah.
don't know where to go, because it's like they feel like they're doing their best.
Yeah.
And or like, you know what, I have a good job, but I want an amazing job that I'm passionate about.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I'm afraid of if I quit, I might not have enough money, and this, where there's all these fears come up, and to get some tools to have these breakthroughs in your life, to not have just an okay life, but to
Yeah.
have a mind-blowing, amazing life. And so those are really people that get an amazing benefit out of breath work. And
Yeah.
even if you're just kind of doing okay and you had this kind of what you would consider a traumatic childhood, and you feel like it's holding you back, it people get amazing benefits just by starting to see that the story that they've created about what's happened in their past is holding them back. It's not what happened, it's the story that they created around it. And when they start to get more conscious of their stories, they can
Mhm.
create different stories and really start to not let this, like, their past impact their future.
Mhm. And that's really it. It's the stories, right? And I think that's a great note to kind of invite people to experience this, because it is, it's one thing to talk about it, and it sounds, it's funny to me because I'm trying to remember even before I had tried breath work. I just remember the reason I went the first time was somebody said to me, I was seeing a psychotherapist, but I felt, and somebody came to me, they're like, well, you can spend a few years in psychotherapy, or you can spend a few sessions in breath work and actually get it out of your system. And I said, like, it's kind of that, like, do you want to, like, how much longer do you want to live that story? And I thought, gosh, like, I didn't like who I was. I didn't like who I was becoming. I was the downer. And I'm like, I'm not the downer. I'm a happy person. But I was becoming that person. And I thought, and I went, and it's hard to almost describe until you experience it. Right. So we want to, for everybody on the call, everybody listening to this recording, we actually want to invite you, and Michael has on Breathwork Online, you can actually participate one of two ways at no charge. There's one way you can participate for your first sort of free session. You can, and I'll include this in the notes in the email afterwards as well. You can go to breathworkonline.com and you select a class to register in, and you can put in a code of Summer Breeze, isn't it?
Yeah.
Summer Breeze. Summer Breeze, and that will give you a free session, so that, like, we can talk about this all day long, but for you to really experience this is the most powerful thing ever. And from there, if you like it, I'm also going to include a link for you to have a full free month's access. So in that free month's access, though, you do enter your credit card information. So make sure you have a first class, make sure you like it, then you can get a month access and really see if it's for you. To see where you go from there, because it's something I really find, I don't know, I've watched different people have different experiences, but doing several experiences will get you, it's not just, don't just do one. I think you do need to have 2, 3, 4 to really start to integrate and feel the integration sort of happen. And I really do. You really don't have anything to lose by trying it for free. So give that a try.
And Christine, I just want to say a couple things. First of all, that if you do the free month, there's no obligation. And if you decide after a month you don't like it, you can just email me, and there's never any charges or anything like that. So there's,
you just opt out.
There's really no risk. And if you like it, you can just keep going. And then there's just a very small monthly fee. Yeah. But it's really, I mean, part of my purpose of developing this online breathwork was, I was getting such good results from doing in-person breathwork that part of, one of the downloads that I got in one of my breathwork sessions was that part of my purpose in life was to allow other people to have this experience in a very convenient and low-cost way. Mm-hmm. And, that's really was my purpose in developing. It took me about a year to kind of convert it and make it work in an online structure, and to figure it out. And
just to even share some of the value, I've seen breathwork facilitators, to do private sessions with I've seen some upwards of $700 for like a 2-hour kind of private session, and honestly, like I've paid a lot more than in sort of retreat formats. And I always tell people, I'm like, I don't know if you can afford not to do this. So the value, even if you do continue on sort of a monthly membership, is phenomenal. And so you have to sort of see, and you will see the value it brings to your life. I would have my breathwork membership over my gym membership, because it's like, I don't know. I just think it's the breath is my priority. And I think that it gives me the most benefit. It helps me to stay active on my own. It helps me to stay healthy, to stay on my purpose too. Right. When you talk about downloads, I never thought in a million years I'd be teaching people how to eat healthy. I was the most unhealthy person, but one of my downloads through a 90-day meditation process was teach people about nutrition. And I thought, what? This is crazy, but this is the type of stuff that comes through. And
also, like for me, just to give you a sense of what is available through breathwork, when I first got this inclination to do online breathwork, this kind of download or whatever, my immediate reaction was, there's no way I can do this. Mm-hmm. It's like, I'm 65, and it's like when I grew up, it's like the internet didn't exist, and all of my business life has been in the brick and mortar world. It's like I wasn't really into social media. I had a flip phone till a year ago. I didn't want to be bothered. And my immediate mind thing is, this is for kids to start online business, get this thing going. You can't do it. You're sick. What are you thinking?
Yeah,
And if I hadn't have done breath work for over a period of years, that would have been the end of that. Like the fear would have been enough for me to go, oh, I'm just going to fail. I'm wasting my time. I'm wasting my money. I'm wasting my energy. But through breath work, when I get downloads like that, it's like I know that no matter what my thoughts are, that I have to go. And I've really changed my relationship to fear. Fear used to hold me back in my life. And now, rather than seeing fear as kind of like the stop sign thing of, oh, I shouldn't go there, I see it more as like this beacon of light that says, this is exactly where I need to go to grow. And this is
absolutely.
a signal, this is a green light, not a red light. If there's no fear in my life, I feel like I'm not growing enough. Because
Mhm.
if you feel fear, it just means it's something new. It's not a bad thing. I'm talking
Mhm.
about psychological fear, not
What
like
is that
falling
living?
off a
It's that
cliff.
living on the edge of like in that excitement, in that I call it on mode too. You're like on in your life because you're in that a little bit of adrenaline or whatever it is that's like excitement and unknown and uncertainty. And I think that is kind of the elixir of life.
Right, exactly. And if you just get the one thing of learning how to work with fear and breath work, it will completely transform your life. Because fear
Absolutely.
is what holds us back from, if you ask yourself, if I wasn't afraid, what would I do? And all these things will start, if I had no fear, and all
Yeah.
these things will start to pop into your mind. And all those things you're being blocked from through one fear or another. And when you start to see that fear is just like your pathway to growth, it completely shifts your life. And that's just one teeny little thing you can get from
Mhm.
breathwork.
I love that you said that. Like, if, yeah, if I didn't have fear, like, what would I do? I always say, like, this is the best year ever, if this is the best week ever, what would I do? And then I try to live accordingly, and that's got me into some trouble, and it's got me to some good times.
Right.
Yeah, no, I think it is a great, and I feel like this is it cultivates your confidence, it brings courage, like the word alignment comes through
Right.
for me often when I think of breath work. It's um it's sort of this amazing magic. I
Yeah.
think.
And really the majority of people say that after they've done breathwork for a while, they just feel more connected to the world and they
Yeah.
just feel more connected to nature.
Hmm.
And they don't feel as separate and they don't feel as alone, and they feel like they're supported by the universe, not that it's a scary place anymore. And
Yeah.
that's like a huge shift of a come from and how you create your world around you.
Hmm.
And like Christine said, like there's no way to like describe it. It's kind of something you have to do to yourself,
Yeah.
for yourself, to
Yeah.
see what happens.
Yeah.
And it's just 90 minutes out of your life to check it out. But
Yeah.
it's like I've worked with like thousands of people now, and the shift in their lives is just amazing. But
Hmm.
it is a practice. Like each experience, you'll get either physical release or downloads or something, or just whatever happens.
Hmm.
But it's kind of like the whole neuro science thing of like neurons that fire together, wire together. The more you get access to this inner guidance, the stronger that neural pathway will be, and the easier it will be for you to connect to it in your everyday life.
Yeah.
So, it is a practice.
I
And
like
if
that.
you
And
want
you
to
don't
get the
need
most
to force
benefit out of
it.
it,
Yeah.
it's best to do it on a somewhat of a regular basis.
I tend to be a person that's like, when I feel disconnected, I'll be asking friends, what should I do? What do I do? What do I do with like my life, this business idea, this whatever. And then I come back to that breath work. I'm like, oh, I already know. I already know. You already know, but
Yeah.
there's just the disconnect. So if you feel uncertain, if you don't know what your purpose is, if you don't know what certain things are in your life, you do know, you just aren't connected. So it's like, this is that pathway.
Yeah. And in just, I know we're getting to the end, just one more
That's
thing
okay.
though,
Yeah.
that, it's like when you start to do breath work, you start to see that your emotional states are always created by something that's inside of you. It's not created by the outside world. And that
Hmm.
really shifts your way of dealing with the world. Like, for instance, if um, you're driving on the freeway and someone cuts in front of you, one person will be super upset and the other person won't bother at all. And it's
Hmm.
exactly the same thing that's happened in the outside world, but those two people created a different story about it. One person created the story, that person's disrespecting me, and the
Hmm.
other person created a different story.
Hmm.
And so it's never what's going on in the outside world that's creating your emotional states. It's always something that's being triggered inside of you.
Yeah.
And once you start to see that, You
Yeah.
start to become less of a victim in your life because you're no longer a victim of things that are happening to you, because nothing's happening to you. It's like things are going on in the world and you're creating your emotional states by your own story.
Hmm.
And you start to shift from this modality of, at least in parts of your life, feeling like a victim to
Hmm.
feeling completely self-empowered. Yes, I created the story. I
Hmm.
can recreate it in a different way.
Hmm.
And once you start to feel this self-empowerment, yes, I don't have to like give up my power to someone else to get these answers or to do this or to do that. It
Hmm.
is just this amazing shift inside of you that
Hmm.
is hard to describe. You have to experience.
Absolutely. And I like what you just said, because I have a little process I like to do where I always think life is happening for me, not to me. So I'm always thinking like, oh, that just happened for me as a positive thing, you know? So it's like, oh, thank you for almost hitting me. I needed to self-check there, like, you know, and it can almost be fun and playful when you actually start to
Yeah.
shift that way and have.
Because rather than blaming things on people, like let's say your boyfriend or girlfriend says something, you get upset, you look
Yes.
inside, what's being triggered? What can I learn from this? What's happening? What can I resolve?
Yeah.
And it's more like you treat the other person more as your teacher than as the enemy. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Oh,
And
you made me upset. You know, that I mean,
yeah. And one thing I always think, whatever you want from your partner, if you're like, why don't you love me more or do this more? I feel like, or give me a massage, or like you want something from them. I always find it's like maybe that's what you need to give.
well, and it's like if you want something from someone else,
Hmm.
it's something that what you really should say, that's what I need to give myself.
That's what I need to give myself.
You know,
Exactly. I
that's
think that's
so
a
it's like you can create that for anything you want from somebody else, you
hmm.
can create for yourself. And that's what the
Absolutely.
self-empowerment comes from. It's so amazing. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And even belief in yourself. For me, a big
yeah,
one that when I think about that, I'm like, I've just always wanted to like have someone in my life that's like, I believe in you. And when I started to apply that to myself, I'm like, wow, that's actually, I believe in myself. And then
yeah.
it just feels so much better.
Well, if you don't believe in yourself, it
Yeah,
doesn't matter what other people say. They can't fill that hole. If you don't love yourself, it
exactly.
doesn't matter what other people say or do. It
Hmm.
can't fill that hole.
Hmm.
You must do your inner work if you really want to produce
Yeah.
the life that you want.
Yeah.
There's no way around it. In breath work, we say like the only way to get to the other side of things is to
Hmm.
go through.
Hmm.
And that's like good news and bad news, I guess, in a sense.
Hmm.
But if you're willing to really be an adventurer and to go through it and to experience it,
Hmm.
it'll just really open up your life and make a remarkable difference.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, that being said, we want to invite all of you to try and experience out on Breathwork Online. We're going to finish our interview and hang on for questions afterwards. But thank you so much, Michael. This has been amazing information and insights, and I can't wait for some of the questions too. But for those of you watching, you can go to breathworkonline.com. The links will be posted in the YouTube. It'll be posted below or in the email, so you'll have access, and you can just enter the code Summer Breeze for your first free session, and I'll be including a link as well for those of you that want to try a full month of unlimited. So I think sessions are Sundays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays.
Right.
You'll see on the register on the schedule and registration page. And honestly, it's one of the best things ever. And make sure you keep us posted on your experiences as well. So, and the cool thing is you're already kind of set up to know exactly the system. It's on this live type Zoom call like we're on. So you just click a link and you come on, and you'll just put in your headphones, and Michael will walk you through it. It's a really magical experience.
And,
So
and
I hope
I
you'll.
just want to emphasize these are all live sessions. Like nothing's
Yeah,
pre-recorded. They all happen live. And at
yeah,
the end of the sessions, people have a chance to share their experiences. And
yeah,
it's really beautiful just to see kind of what's happening with other people too.
yeah,
And it's inspiring just to see that other people are releasing this and releasing that. And that's
yeah.
another way of like retraining your mind to say, hey, if they can do that,
If
I
they
can
can
do
do it, I can do it. And you get to see the community of the world of how
it. Yeah.
people are suffering in all their different ways, and that we're all trying to get through life in a happy way. And it's really a great community. And yeah, I love being a part of it. So I'm excited to have you guys join in as well.
And you start to see the same people and over again. It's really
Yeah.
like this online breathwork community. It's like, you know, everybody always, oh, I wish I had this community of people that are like on the same path as me. And this is where you can find it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a community of people that are growing and in their life,
Yeah.
um, and yeah, breaking through those barriers. I think it's beautiful to see some of the stories in there. Awesome. Okay, Michael, thank you so much. We're going to end the recording now. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you at Breathwork. Thanks, Michael.
You're welcome.